Hello, 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 everybody. It's Lauren Young Durbin, your career coach extraordinaire. I'm super excited about our call today, our Tyche Talk today. For those of you who aren't familiar with Tyche Talk, it's a bi-weekly live stream. We record it, so if you miss the live stream, you can see it later. I talk to guest speakers who are experts in their field, and we find out all kind of tidbits, their journey, what you can do to get to where they are, if that's what you want to do. If you have any questions during the live feed or live stream, go ahead and send them in, and I'll ask our guest the questions, and hopefully the questions she can answer. It's not like about quantum physics or something. So, without further ado, let me introduce our guest today. Her name is Andreana. Did I say it right?
Perfect.
Okay. I was telling her I stress about names. So I'm like, I'm gonna get it wrong. Andreana Elise. She's a poet, educator, community grower, and author of Circle the Bones with Shining. It was just published by Finishing Line Press and available on Amazon and bookshop.org. She's the lead storyteller and poet in residence with Earth, all caps, stands for Empowering All Relatives to Heal. Oh, all relatives to heal. That's Earth. A global collaboration of over 1,000 mind bodies medicine practitioners and trauma transformers. She works with youth and women across the world, freeing their voice, beauty, and power through poetry, heart connection, and self-authorship. And I'm super excited because she has an announcement she'd like to share with us at the end of our talk. So stay tuned for that. So welcome to Tyche Talks, Andreana. How are you?
I am so good. I am so happy to be here with all of you, with you and everyone invisibly that I cannot see at this moment, but I know is there. So I feel you, I feel your hearts, and I'm great. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's just jump right in. What are some of the obstacles that people face when they first starting to their writing journey?
I think often it's kind of those blocks we have inside, right? It's the resistance. It's the, well, what do I have to say? Or I know what I have to say, but I don't think I can say it the right way or the way that will really connect with people. So I think honestly, so much of it is that mental resistance, emotional resistance, that we really have something important. And the way we're going to say it is beautiful as is. We don't need to take a bunch of courses to, really start writing. We can just start now. So I think that's the biggest obstacle. And then obviously, if you want to be a published author, there are there's just a process that you have to get used to, which is often rejection, and kind of getting used to just the process of submitting things, maybe not being accepted initially. But if you keep at it, you absolutely will be. At some point, you will get published. So I think those are two of the obstacles. There may be more we can touch on.
And just so you know, I forgot to press the go live button. So I'm going to introduce you again. For those who are just joining us, she was answering the first question was what are some of the biggest challenges that people face when starting her book. And she was telling us it's as with most things, it's our inner obstacles that are holding us back as opposed to any external things. And to just keep at it. But for those of you, which is everyone, who missed the intro, just want to introduce Andreana again. So our guest today is Andrea Elise. She's a poet, educator, community grower, and the author of Circle the Bones with Shining, which is published by Finishing Line Press and is available on Amazon and bookshop.org. She's the lead storyteller and poet in residence for Earth, which stands for Empowering All Relatives to Heal. And it's a global collaboration of over 1,000 mind body medicine practitioners and trauma transformers. Andreana works with youth and women across the world, freeing their voice, beauty, and power through poetry, heart connection, self authorization. So, I'm sorry, self authorship. And as I was saying earlier, she has an announcement she's going to share with us at the end of this live. So stay tuned to hear the great news. And so we're going to jump right back in. So sorry about that, but people got to hear it twice. So let's talk about a little bit about your journey. Where do you find inspiration for your writing, and how do you keep your creative spark alive?
I I really find inspiration in the souls that I meet, and often it's women. Like I have just come across so many incredible women in my life, in my path, who have supported me, who have been sisters, and also women who have been brave enough to open their hearts and souls and share their journey with me. And whenever I listen to what one of our sisters has gone through, it just kindles that fire inside of me that, what we've experienced has such value. It is medicine for our hearts and it's medicine for the world when we share it, because when I hear about what something someone has gone through and I can relate to it, I feel less alone. I feel like, oh my gosh, the burden isn't so heavy. Someone else understands and empathizes. So that is what really lights my fire, is encouraging other women, oftentimes who haven't um, just had the platform, the support,
Yeah.
um, to be able to share their stories, and their creative spark and their inspiration with the world. Just supporting our sisters to do that is really what keeps me going. And I also find a lot of personal inspiration from my own poetry in nature,
Hmm.
and also with really the heartbeat of what's going on in our world. There is a lot
Yeah.
going down in our world, a
Yes.
lot, and I I personally need a lot of solitude, but I don't want to shut myself off. Like I want to
Mhm.
keep that channel open. And so I will often write about, even if I'm not in Gaza or Ukraine, but I find myself connected to places that are going through a lot and wanting to somehow channel that through my writing.
So, speaking again specifically about your writing, are there particular stories that particularly resonate with you? Like you're like, oh, this really hits home. This really resonates with me. Are there particular stories that strike you that way?
Well, the thing that's coming to mind is I was working with some Iranian women during the time of the height of the women life freedom protests, and
Mm.
revolution that was really hitting the country last couple years ago, but it continues. But it was
Yeah.
really at like the start of that revolution, and I just remember one beautiful Iranian woman who was a protester who had been chased by the police, shot at, and she said, my dream is to be able to ride a red Vespa with the wind blowing in my hair. She said, I just want the freedom to be able to get on a motorbike and just go and not be looked at or not be taken aside by the police or not have the worries that we have to deal with. And that image just of her riding this red Vespa with the wind blowing in her hair, I'm like, gosh, I just love that. So those are the kinds of stories, like when you can see that spark of life in someone, no matter what the oppressive circumstances they may be dealing with, that really like that. Those are the stories that I want to tell.
And it's got this image of like poster, and there's like Italia, and all the, like pastel colors, and she's just on her Vespa, very Audrey, Audrey Hepburn.
Mhm, exactly.
Yeah, so I love that so much. So, what are some of the key techniques that people can use? I should say writers. It's like when I was running, they said if you're a runner if you run, even if you run slower. So instead of just saying people, I'm going to say writers. People are watching this. They want to be writers, and we're all writers. We all have stories within us. So what are some techniques that writers can use to bring their stories to the forefront and on the paper or on compute in the computer?
I mean, everyone talks about having a writing practice, and some people will say, write every day or write in the morning. I really think you have to find really what you can stick with, what works for you. I
Yeah.
don't always journal every day. Like I'm very kind of free flowing, but one thing that's helped me is um, on my phone, I have a little app that's just notes. And
Hmm.
so whenever I see something or whenever something kind of sparks my inspiration, I will just write a little like post-it note to myself and just kind of keep that running list. I also do voice memos sometimes. So
Mm.
I think sometimes it's making it really easy on yourself. Um, Sometimes that idea, like I need to sit down and write 3 pages every single day, to me, that just stops me in my tracks. I'm like, no, that's too much. That's too heavy. No, thank you. So I think whatever we can do to make it like bite size and light and enjoyable, that's my kind of biggest advice as you're getting started. And then um, for me, writing with my whole body has been really, really
Mm.
vital. So I took a training course in mind body medicine, which is breath and mindfulness and how we integrate um, our whole systems and also moving trauma out of our bodies. And I find that writing is actually a really key tool for moving trauma
Yeah.
and um, emotional, just emotional things from where we're holding it and onto the page and releasing it. Yeah, you were gonna say something.
Oh, I was going to ask you to tell us a little bit more about writing. I have never heard that term for writing with your whole body.
Mm. Yeah. And so, for example, in the mornings, I do stretches and yoga, and I really try to connect with just my whole being. Because if I sit down and I'm cold, I just wake up, I head to the computer right away, and I'm just in my head and I'm gonna bang it out. Sometimes that works, and sometimes I'll have something so like an idea that I just have to run with, and I will wake up in the middle of the night and just go at it. But I do find that by tuning in, taking some time to breathe, taking a quiet meal where I'm not plugged in and just really paying attention to the world around me, my senses, I'm so much richer in the information I have to draw on. And I'm actually more centered in sort of a deeper voice. Like there's a more resonant voice that I'm tuning into. It's not kind of just the voice of my intellect, it's the voice of my heart, it's the voice of my kind of deeper self. So that's what I mean when I say writing with the whole body. It's like tuning into your body first and then writing from that place.
So it's like having a greater awareness,
Mhm.
talking things over, a greater awareness of what's going on around you. I love
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
It's funny, when I wanted to start writing and I wanted to do journal writing, I was kind of the opposite to
Mm.
you. I told myself for a month I have to write something, a
Mhm.
journal. It didn't have to be a certain, like sometimes I literally wrote, this is my journal entry for today. So I have written in my journal. I'll try again to write more tomorrow. But it helped me get into that habit of, and then it became easier. So for those of you who require more discipline, naturally inspired, there's still hope. Just write anything. It's okay. Even if it's just write, I am writing something right now because I have done that. So,
I love that, and I really want to resonate with what you're saying, because discipline is actually really important. Like you can make it easy on yourself and bite size, and kind of go with the flow. But the reason I'm a writer, well, because it's something that has been inside of me since I was very young, and it just will never let me go. But also, I write something every single day, and it's my spiritual practice. It's my discipline. Like writing is something that is integrated into kind of a lot of the parts of my life. So I really I love what you just said. And can I ask you, did you make it a habit? Is it something that you keep doing?
Yes and no, and then yeah. So yes, I made it a habit. I fell off once I became pregnant, and I got back on after I mostly recovered from my twins' birth, and then I fell off again. So I'm working on getting back on the horse. So I'm making my own declaration today. I for the rest of this month through July, I'm going to write something in my journal every day. So I'm
Yay.
a writer. Look at that. That's all it takes. If you
Uh,
write, you're a writer.
you are. And because I'm a poet, I think sometimes people also find poetry is very inaccessible or like, oh, you
Mhm.
have to know certain things to be a poet. But I also think everyone's a poet. And I just want to put
Mhm.
that out there because I just find poetry is also just such a beautiful way of tapping into another aspect of our creativity and our
Mhm.
artistry and beauty and even painful things we go through. Sometimes writing a poem about it is actually easier um,
Mhm.
because it's less intellectual. We don't have to explain ourselves. It's just coming from a really raw and real place. So I just also encourage people to experiment with poetry if they're journaling or writing.
How do you do that though? Because when I think of journaling, like I know it encompasses everything, even if like you're drawing. Well, when I think of journaling, I'm thinking of like a narrative form. So if you were like, yeah, I gotta write something today. Maybe I'll try my hand at poetry. I know it doesn't have to rhyme. That's not how do you get started?
It
Just trying it out.
it doesn't. The way I often will get started is either there's like a line, a phrase, something that feels like I can move with it, or an image, like a really strong image will come to me. And I'll just want to write that image. And sometimes that's it. Sometimes the image is the poem. And so those are two ways that I sometimes lead into a poem.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's not something I can dissect completely. It
Of
sort
course
of
not.
comes over comes
It's
over me.
poetry.
It
It's
just
not meant to be
exactly.
dissected.
Or sometimes people write songs or raps. Like it can come in like a lot of different forms. But yeah, I just encourage people to like play around with the journaling and allow it to be whatever
Yeah,
they feel in their hearts.
yeah. It's a creative process, so people will be creative about it. So when people they start tapping into their inner writer, so now it's an out, outer writer, how do they balance vulnerability with the need to protect themselves? Because often when people have a hard time making that transition, they're like, well, I don't want people to know too much about me. Yeah.
This is actually, we were talking earlier about obstacles, and I think this is actually a place where a lot of times people sort of stop their writing path
Yeah.
because they get to the point where they've written something potentially pretty powerful, maybe something from a past experience or something they, have gone through in life or want to share with others. And they get to the point where they're going to share it and then it's like too scary, or they
Yeah.
start editing themselves and and I've done it where I've been like, this is so powerful and I want to share this, but it feels so scary that I'm going to start taking this part out and kind of
Mhm.
making this a little more vague and not so specific. um if you're going to write memoir or anything along those lines, it can be extremely vulnerable. So I always encourage people, especially if you want to write a book, because a lot of people want to write a book. Um, but I really say you got to start with an essay. You have to start with
Okay.
something like 5,000 words that you hone, you're comfortable with, you've revised it, you've shared it with people. Maybe you've submitted it to a couple of magazines or online sources, or maybe you posted on your own blog or your Facebook, just some way of getting comfortable sharing a snapshot, one thing that you've written that's coming from a really real place with others, with the world.
Yeah.
So I really recommend that as the first step, because first of all, deciding to write a book is a huge thing. But even if you
Yes.
do write it, often you'll get to that point of like, oh, but this is pretty scary to share all of this. So yeah, I
Mhm.
just recommend starting with the personal essay and going from there.
Okay. That makes sense. I mean, I guess like you can always, you can always write I forgot what they call it. It's like a historical narrative, historical fiction or something like that. You're like, it's an interpretation. You can tell like if it's easier for me sometimes to think about looking, speaking in a third voice kind of
Mhm.
deal. Like there are different ways, just right. Um, so what's the most important piece of advice that you would give to someone who wants to write their truth and share their story with the world, other than starting with an essay?
Definitely that. I'm actually, I've just started my own writing circle, and I'm finding that the sisterhood and support of having a safe space where if I've written something during the week, I can bring it in, is really, it's helpful for accountability. It's also helpful for community. So I definitely feel like writing can be so solitary and you can feel very alone with it. So
Hmm.
finding some support, some community is beautiful, and I do recommend it. Um, that's one, I guess one piece of advice is to give yourself that gift of
Hmm.
a circle or a workshop space or a community of people you feel comfortable with sharing. That's one thing. I would also say really read, really soak in good writing and the writers that you gravitate towards. Like, why do you gravitate towards them? What in their voice resonates with you? What do you want to emulate in your own writing? And there was a time where I was afraid, like if I read too many writers, maybe I'll start imitating their voice and I'll kind of lose my own. But it doesn't really work that way. I found like
Yeah.
your voice is your own voice, and you do pick up influences, and initially you may start finding like, oh, I'm writing a lot like this person,
Hmm.
but I think that fades over time as you get more comfortable and it integrates into something that is really authentically your own. So yeah, don't be afraid to read other writers, to integrate what you like about them into your own work.
And my advice would be to get started. Start. So that kind of rolls into your last question. What are some resources and tools that people can use to get started?
Hmm. A journal,
Yeah.
a pen. I mean, I know we all have our computers, and I do write a lot on my computer. Um, I really do recommend doing some stuff um, by hand, especially if you're gonna write your truth, if it's gonna come from that really deeper place. There's something quite visceral about
Mhm.
the process. So I would say, get a journal. I have a very cheap journal. I have not invested in an expensive one because I like to just cross stuff out and be very messy in it. Um, I think that's one thing definitely to invest in. I don't know. I'm curious about your like what because you're so great about like saying just get started, and you're right. It's just about getting started. But what was helpful for you? I'm really curious to hear.
Um, Getting over, thank you, like the self-doubt. Like no one wants to hear what I have to say. Like or what I have to say isn't important. Um, One of the things I was finally one of the ways I finally was able to get back into writing is starting thinking about it as, for me, this is helpful. Might be the opposite effect for other people. Think about prosperity, like for my boys. Because when people have heard the story again over and over again, but right after giving birth to them, I ended up being in a coma for a while, and writing about that experience, and that kind of opened up like the world of, okay, it's okay for me to write this. This is what I want you to know. Um, to remind myself, because I was having a hard time with my memory. So for me, that's what it was. Identify with what's going on and just write about it. Sometimes, like you were talking about trauma, like sometimes writing about the hardest thing in your life is the best thing you can do for yourself, because then it's out of your body and it's down. So you don't, it's kind of like, for me, it always feels like it's coming out. Like the pain doesn't necessarily go away, but it's starting to lessen and come out because I've taken it from outside of my head and put it on paper. So I'm a writer too, like literal writer. I don't
Mhm.
type things very, but yeah, so that's what I would say. Make it personal, make it real to you. Like you don't have to write for anyone else. It could just be for yourself. Um, my inspiration happened to be my boys, but sometimes I just had to get thoughts out of my head. And it's kind of like with post-it notes and to-do lists. But and sometimes you can just start with that. So yeah, I guess mine would be just get started, write what you know. And if you think you don't know anything, write about a show you saw on TV, why you like it, why you don't. It's kind of like with you and you were saying about books. I was like, unless it's a well, even reality shows nowadays, they're written. It's like, why does that plot resonate with me, or why didn't it? So there's inspiration everywhere, and so you just have to be open to it.
I really thank you for sharing that. It touched on the the beginning of my process of writing my book, which was the experience of caring for my mother in the last stages of her life. And I mean, that book took me a while to live, and then it took me 7 years to write, because it was so deep. Because I was still healing, and I could write a bit, but it then took sort of everything out of me to write it, and then you
Yeah,
have to take it back. And I have seen how writing from those places has lightened my life, has changed my life, because the grief isn't lodged somewhere, just,
yeah,
it has a place, and I can um not distance myself from it, but I can honor it. I
mm,
can honor my experiences. I can honor my mother, and her life force through my writing. And that gives it a sort of a sweetness, even though the pain is, like you said, still there. So that's why when we talked about doing this, I always encourage, you can write about anything, but I really do encourage people to go to that place in their own hearts where there's something that maybe has been bottled up, or something really important that they feel they want to share.
yeah.
Um, and it does not have to be. I love what you said. It does not have to be for anybody else. It absolutely can be for you. Yeah.
Mhm. Um, well, I guess we're gonna make a slight pivot to your announcements.
Oh,
I feel like I should have a better segue, but I don't. So, yes, the floor is yours.
oh, thank you. Well, you so kindly mentioned in the introduction that I'm part of this beautiful global collaborative called Earth, which stands for Empowering All Relatives to Heal. And as sort of the writer in residence, we just got funding for an incredible collaborative book project,
Oh, wow.
bringing in the voices and visions and weaving them together from youth and women all across the nation and the world. So we're holding youth workshops and creating poetry and art together, and really just we're going to start creating this book project, but it's really open to anyone who's interested.
Mm.
So I'm just kind of putting it out there because I want your listeners, or the people who are here today with us, to know that they can contact me through my website. I'm really just open to connecting with people who care about what's going on in the world, care about our youth, care about our women's voices, and are interested in joining hands and doing things together and creating some beauty out of all the hardship that we've gone through. And so, yeah, that book project has gotten funded and it's moving forward. So that's exciting. And there's workshops and things that people can tap into for their own youth and their own and also their own stories. So yeah, there's exciting
Nice.
things happening.
So, and what's your website?
Oh, it's I was gonna put it in the chat, but I don't think it works that way. I don't know if it works that way.
Yeah, well, you can just say it and then we'll put it in the notes, the show notes, as they say in podcasts, but just captions.
Perfect. It's my name, Andreana-Elise.com.
Cool. That's should be easy enough.
Hopefully, although the spelling, I mean, you can spell it for people and they can see it.
It's on the screen at the bottom, people.
Perfect.
It's yeah, Elise Elise. It's
Yes.
I think yeah, that's right. Yes.
Yes. Perfect.
So I wanted to thank you again so much for sharing your expertise, your journey, your advice, all of that. It's been great having you here.
Oh my gosh, Lauren, thank you so much. I am just so happy to know you, to meet you. I'm so happy you're writing, and I hope that this has inspired some of your wonderful, our wonderful audience today. Thank you so much.